Now, I'll repeat what I said on the tape, that it's important that we have everyone's permission or consent before a recording is made. I think that's an important concept. I have to say to you, I'm living in a country right now. I think you are living in a country as well, but for a long time, and I'm living in a country where our democratic principles are very much threatened. I know that recently in Indonesia, there were a series of protests. You probably are reading about all that's happening in the United States since Trump became president for the second time. We could have a whole course on that, but we won't. Today, we'll talk about disability. I know that because of scheduling, there are a number of topics that were on the agenda for today. It's a lot to cover, which is why I suggested focusing on a broad enough topic, an important topic of ableism. You might want to put the caption function on your screen. If you are using a laptop in front of you, that can help. I also know we have different levels of English language proficiency. And it is my personal view that one should not be disadvantaged in engaging in a clinic or discussing this material just because your English language level is not high enough. Very few people outside of Indonesia speak Bahasa Indonesia, right? Maybe the people of Malaysia would understand you very well in Bahasa Indonesia, which some people call Bahasa Malaysia. In any event, my suggestion is, since we're not doing interpretation with headsets or somebody interpreting, I'm going to ask at different points that those of you who feel if I am saying something that's not understood, I may pause at certain times or would ask you to signal that you'd like someone to translate. And one of your peers in the class, I'm sure, would be happy to do that. But another way I want to do this session, both because of the language levels and also to be interactive. Oh, I'll say selamat sore to ni kadek ayumi. I see you there. We will spend a little bit of time at the beginning where I want each of you to be talking to another member of the class, to one of your peers, in whatever language you want, in English, Bahasa Indonesia, about some of the things we're discussing today. You will talk about it 2 by 2, in a group of 2 or a group of 3, and then we will come back to the large group and share some of that conversation. Okay, so any questions so far? Probably the best way is raise your hand and put your mic on. Any questions? Selamat sore Tumade Dewi. Any questions? Any comments? Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. So the first question I have for you is, with this term ableism, I think I can put that in the chat, right? It's a kind of a new word, even in the English language. I don't think it yet has an equivalent in Bahasa Indonesia or many other languages. Here in Spain, it's capacitismo. But in any event, I'd like you to spend 5 minutes, turn to the person next to you, either 2 of you or 3 of you. I know it may need some rearranging of the chairs. I don't know what to say to Akila Rischianti and Ni Kadek Ayumi and to Made Dewi Utari Wangsa Untaran. I can't put you in a small, I guess I could put you in a small room. Pak Sigit, do you think you could put the 3 other people in line in a small room? I don't know.
I think uh, I think it takes more time to
Oh,
that.
okay, okay. So those of you who can, will take about 5. So I want you to give some examples of what you think ableism means. Things you've seen in your own experience, things from the reading that you did, um, the video that you saw, whatever. Try to define the term ableism, and we'll come back and share the different interpretations. And of course, there will be some similar kinds of things that you will find out. But this is an easy way to begin. You can speak in English or Bahasa Indonesia and come up with some definitions and some examples. And I'll come back in the room in about 5 minutes. Okay? Do you need more time? You good?
We're good, sir.
Okay, so let's have any group can start. One person in the group, just put your mic on and tell us what you came up with.
Um, would you like for me to introduce myself first?
Sure, yeah.
My name is Eliza. My name is Eliza. I am currently on the 7th semester at
Oh,
Udayana Law School. And while reading the second assignment, I think I can conclude that ableism is when you didn't give a person with disability the same uh, opportunities you would give a person without disability. So this would even mean small things like staring at them excessively, or what's written, which is not giving them, for example, not giving a person with wheelchair ramps, not giving them access to a building. That could be a form of ableism. I think that would be the correct definition.
excellent, excellent. Same opportunities, or we could say same treatment, right? Not treating people the same way due to their disability. Great. Let's hear from another group. And of course, whoever is speaking for the group, you can say, someone else from the group could add something. Actually, first, for anyone from Elisa's group want to add to what Elisa said before we move on? Okay. And if anyone needs interpretation or translation, I hope you will turn to a neighbor and someone will summarize what Elisa said. Okay. Okay, let's go to a different group. While we're waiting, I want to underscore also what Elisa said about the wheelchair ramp. That's one of the most obvious forms of ableism, is when people are not able to get into a building, get into a room due to the steps. Even one step sometimes, one step like this, if you're using a wheelchair, you can't get in. So that's one of those very obvious physical barriers, if you will. Let's hear from another group about some examples or some other definitions of ableism. Be sure to put your mic on.
Okay, let me introduce myself.
Hmm.
Good morning, my name is Hani Valentine. You can call me Hani. Just like a common ableism to disability. I ever see people who intense stare at them from top to the down and then just go and ignores that disability people. Thank you.
Okay, again, I think underscoring this notion to stare at someone, um, to ignore someone, those are forms of different treatment, of treating someone as if they don't exist, or treating them too much, to the staring. There's a phrase in the disability world, no more stares, okay? And that can mean stares like visually staring at someone, which is a form of ableism or discrimination, or having stairs to get into a building. That kind of stare is a form of ableism. And notice, by the way, I use the term ableism or discrimination. And we'll come back to that because I think discrimination is a term you're more familiar with when we look at other identities or characteristics. Let's hear from another group.
Yes. Uh, okay. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Madi Dewi Utari Wangsa Intaran, and I'm also in 7th semester. So I agree with my friends that ableism is discrimination towards people with disabilities. It can happen because society assume that people without disabilities, or we say normal people, is better, or we can say disabilities make them less than other people. It also can be subtle, like example, when you treat people with disabilities with PD, or simply like you treat them like a child, like you assume they cannot make their own decision. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Great, great examples, great definitions. Using the word normal to talk about people who are not disabled. We don't think about that, but we say normal people and others. Less than human. In fact, in some languages, again, because I'm in Spain, historically the term was minus válido for a disabled person. Minus válido, less than normal, less than valid. And now we say discapacidad, which is like disability or disabilitas, right? The notion of pity that Mari, now I've lost your name in the caption, Marawili. The notion of pity, which we don't think of necessarily as negative or discriminatory, but talking about someone with charity, with pity, because we think of that as care. And often it is a form of care, but at the same time, as you may have gathered from the reading or from the TED Talk or just your own common sense, it's also a way of treating differently and unequally another person. Now, I said discrimination is a good substitute, a good synonym for the term ableism. A little bit different. I think ableism is broader, but let's talk for a moment about discrimination, something you're very aware of in your country. I'm going to ask, actually, doesn't need to be a group now, just some examples of what are other members of society who have faced discrimination in Indonesia or in Bali in particular. Who are some of the other demographics, if you will, or character? Who are other, let's just say, what are other forms of discrimination that you're aware of, unique to Indonesia or to many countries in the world besides disability? Anybody, just put your mic on. Anyone online as well. Nikadek, Madi Dewi, Akila. What are other forms of discrimination that Indonesia has been dealing with?
I think I can answer that, sir.
Okay.
I think for other forms of discrimination against disabled individuals could be that we actually see a lot of disabled people in Indonesia unable to get work. And we actually see them frequently on the streets, homeless, because they are unable to get work. We see this actually a lot in Indonesia, not just with disabled people. A lot of Indonesian companies made it so that older people are unable to get work, and often we see those that are disabled are actually older when we see them in the streets. They're actually older. They can push from 60 to 70 years old. And we see them actually without, most of the time without equipment, without either wheelchairs, without sticks to prop themselves up on. We see them frequently trying their hardest to get by on the streets using their hands, maybe because their feet
Okay.
are not working.
Okay. Was that Eliza again? Who was just speaking? Who was that?
Yes, that is
Okay. Okay.
Eliza.
Yeah. Okay. Some good examples. Employment is a very big field of discrimination against people with disabilities, against disabled people. Older people, disabled or not disabled, in many societies of the world, are indeed discriminated against. Not simply in employment, but other aspects of life. So we deal with the elderly, seniors, older persons, those are different terms. And something you pointed out, Elisa, is the intersectionality. To be disabled and old, or to be disabled and poor, to be disabled and a woman or a girl form more than one kind of discrimination. Okay, so we've talked about disabled people, older people. Who else in Indonesia society have experienced discrimination? Who else? And again, not just Indonesia, but many countries of the world. Who else faces discrimination? Anybody? What about women? Women and girls? Isn't this something that's been discussed a lot in Indonesia in recent years? Gender discrimination? Yeah? Any comments on that?
Good morning, sir. My name is Virginia, and maybe I have another form of discrimination in Indonesia.
Oh,
So
okay.
for me personally, this is my personal experience as a Chinese Indonesian, or we call Cindo. We got many of discrimination from other people, and there is public facts that as a Cindo, we are really hard if we want to get work in government because we are not the real Indonesian, even though we have the Indonesian passport or as we born as Indonesian. So maybe that is another kind of discrimination. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Virginia. I know that from anecdotally and from what I've read, and we've seen some very violent clashes over time in Indonesia against Tindo people. Is Tindo a, that's not a, is that, that's not a negative term, is it? Educate me. Is that an acceptable term?
It is an
Tindo?
acceptable
Okay,
term.
yeah.
sir.
And thanks for raising that. So that's a form of what we could call ethnic discrimination or national origin discrimination. And yes, it's clearly, there's a history in parts of Indonesia where people of Chinese origin are discriminated. Okay, now we're getting closer. What are some other kinds of discrimination we have here now? Older people, women and girls, Chinese, ethnic Chinese. A couple others I'm thinking of that I think are, again, some are unique to Indonesia and many are in many countries in the world. These
Okay.
issues we talk about are all over. Yeah, who's talking?
Good morning, sir. First, I
Mhm.
want to introduce myself. My name is Nikade Ayuni. Here I am, 100% Balinese, a girl. I want to talk about, how in Bali, maybe the discrimination about gender, woman and man. Because in Bali, we are know about very, very common. Women in Bali don't have the same rule with men in Bali. Maybe it's about our culture, or maybe it's hard to make it different. When people in Bali, women in Bali don't have that's power to talk about their needs or talk about their what they want, because if woman in Bali speak, that's not that good, because man is have big power, but more than a woman, maybe like that. I'm so sorry if my English is not that good. Thank you.
No, no, thank you, Nikade, thank you for raising that. Terima kasih. No, that's another excellent example. And I know I recently co-wrote a law journal article for one of the Udayana journals on, maybe Paksiki can help remind me, on
Udayana Journal Law and Culture.
yes, thank you. And maybe you'll share the article or I will send it on the specific status of Balinese women and the discrimination they face after they've been incarcerated and come back and try to join society, becoming integrated in society. And I learned from my colleagues with whom I co-authored the paper and from reading the specific form of discrimination. So again, we could talk about the intersectionality of women within the Balinese community. So that itself. Okay, well, thanks. We have some good examples. And the reason I'm raising all this, because you're saying this class is about disability, but it's often useful to compare in other contexts. And there's a couple more I'm thinking of. And we'll see if I'm going to see if someone raises it, because it's better if someone want to talk about another form of discrimination you are familiar with. How about religion? I think there are parts of Indonesia where people who are Hindu are discriminated against, not in Bali. Other parts of Indonesia where Muslims are discriminated against, and some would argue in Bali, perhaps. Maybe in Lompoc, if you're not Muslim, then you are discriminated against if you are Hindu or Christian. Certainly parts of the country where Christians are discriminated against, right? Does anyone want to talk further about religious discrimination? Yes, no? And by the way, I hope while we're speaking again in English that if you are needing assistance in translation, interpretation, please turn to a peer who can tell you. Anyone want to comment on religious discrimination? No?
Sir,
Oh.
someone here want to answer your question,
Okay.
but I will be translating for her.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Lisa. Okay.
Selamat pagi, Prof. Perkenalkan, saya Siti Agliseka Marcella. Saya sudah tinggal lama di Pulau Bali dan orang tua saya itu merantau di Bali sejak dari masa mudanya, dan ada beberapa kondisi yang dimana saya merasakan ada orang, bisa kita sebut orang lokal, yang mendiskriminasikan agama seperti saya, agama Islam, dan saya berjilbab, dan saya berasal dari suku Jawa yang mereka tuh sering mengejek dengan kalimat Jawa, dan itu sering terjadi di lingkungan saya gitu. Intinya.
So her name is Siti Agris Eka Marcella, and she is based. Her parents first moved to Bali from Java, from another island in Indonesia called Java,
A
and
very big island.
yes, very big island, far bigger than Bali. But her parents moved here, and she stated that she received some forms of discrimination, two forms of discrimination actually. First, on the fact that she is Muslim and she wears a hijab, which made Balinese people, local Balinese people, discriminate against her because of that. And second, because she is from Java. So in Bali, in particular, there is some type of prejudice against people from outside of Bali, particularly people from outside of Bali that is still inside of Indonesia. Anyone who's outside of Bali is basically gonna be called Jawa. This is
Oh, okay.
basically a slur. It is equivalent to a slur, but it
Interesting.
is so normalized in in Bali itself to call someone, particularly of course from the island of Java, Jawa, that it essentially became a slur to the Javanese community. So yes, our friend here have experienced a form of discrimination, not just because she is a Muslim, but also because from the fact that merely that she's from outside of Bali.
Very, very interesting. This notion of regional discrimination. And though I think most of the world, when they think of Indonesia, they think of Jawa. And interesting to find that that has a negative view. So you could call that regional discrimination. And as for the hijab, as you know, in many parts of the world, that is a huge issue. In the United States, where the hijab is a newer phenomenon, in Europe, and again, in parts of, obviously in parts of Indonesia, the wearing of the hijab itself becomes a form of discrimination, anti-Islam. So those are great examples. There's one other category I wanted to speak about, and then come back to the ableism a little bit, and that is on the basis discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, so LGBTQ plus, right? And I think again, Indonesia, in my sense, is grappling with particularly gender discrimination, sexual orientation discrimination, gender identity, and religion. These are issues, in my sense, the government at least is making some effort. People are studying it, people are talking about it, there are policies. Does anyone want to talk about sexual orientation or gender identity discrimination, examples they see of that? Okay, I'll wait a moment. If anyone online, by the way, wants to talk, Akila, Nikadek, I know you're not in the room. It's a little harder sometimes when you're not in the room. Okay. Oh, I see a hand up. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. First, my personally experience with LGBT is via social media. She is a real woman, but just her appearance is like male. She's so others think that she is boy with girl appearance, so she get discriminated and call us LGBT.
So LGBT is a slur term, right? A negative or pejorative term. Is that right?
Yes, thank you.
Or can be, yeah. Well, thank you. So again, social media is a very important forum where we see all kinds of discrimination, LGBT and particularly transgender discrimination. It's a huge issue right now, being a political and cultural issue in the United States and many countries in the world. And this is an example of where a term, the very words themselves, depending on the context, can be seen as descriptive, positive, LGBT, and in another context as negative, as a slur. because we know there are worse terms, right, for LGBT. These are all great examples that you brought forward. And was there anyone else, by the way, from the small group that didn't get to talk about those definitions or examples of ableism before we move on a bit? Anyone want to add to what we've heard so far? Okay. So one of the things that I think that's distinctive, is someone, I see the mic being passed. Yes?
Okay, thank you. My name is Ayumi. I want to tell about ableism, how I know about ableism and how I um, um, discuss it with my friends.
Okay.
Ableism is a set of belief, practice, and system that devalue and discriminate against people with disabilities, assuming that being non-disabled is the normal or ideal way to live. If it includes prejudice, discrimination, and systemic inequality direct at people who have not only physical but also mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Terima kasih, Ayumi. Good examples to expand on this definition. Let me talk about first, you've raised the mental or intellectual disabilities. Learning disabilities are also communication, whether it's hard of hearing or deafness, whether it's visual impairments or blindness. Often we think of the physical disability, right? The ramps, the stairs, how wide the doors are, wheelchair users, people in schoolers, what we call mobility impairments or physical disability impairments. And you've introduced the fact not always is obvious how society discriminates, how ableism operates against other forms of disability, right? Not just the physical. So that's an important point you made. And again, you've reminded us that we talk about normal in a very casual way, whereas we assume the normal is the non-disabled and the disabled is the abnormal, if you will. So that's important. You said something else there that I'm missing. I think underlining, emphasizing some of the points earlier made about treatment and perspective and how we view. And so, one of the things that's unique about ableism that's different from discrimination against older people or women or ethnic minorities, religious minorities, gender and sexual minorities, is this notion of intentionality, intent. When we talk about discrimination against these other groups, there's something intentional, there's something active in the form of discrimination. It's with some kind of malice or some kind of negative feelings. With disability discrimination or ableism, it has nothing to do with intentionality, although some of you have given some examples how we view people with pity or less than normal. But ableism is as simple as failing to put a ramp in a building or having a toilet in a bathroom that's large enough for someone in a wheelchair to use, or a counter that's low enough for a wheelchair user, or writing language that's simple enough for someone with a intellectual disability or learning disability. Also, many things that people who have visual impairments are unable to negotiate the environment, to navigate the environment. People with hearing impairments are unable to participate, be involved in society. All of those forms of exclusion or exclusivity are also forms of ableism, and they have nothing to do with intention. They have nothing to do with any government or employer or individuals expressing hatred or negative views towards disabled people. It's just the way the environment has been built. We use the term a lot. I'm going to put it in the chat. The term the built environment. Okay, the built environment, the way it's been constructed over time. Many people in the disability community talk about what is disabling is not the people, it's the environment. That is disabling. Because it excludes participation or hampers discrimination, makes more difficult, participation, makes it more difficult because the way the environment has been built. Buildings, mainly here we're looking at buildings and access to buildings. But of course, in some places around the world, including parts of Indonesia, the environment itself, it's very hilly, it's very steep, it's very rugged, water, all these kinds of things can be barriers, can be disabling. So again, the important thing about ableism is it's not about intentionality. It's about the failure to try and make the environment more accommodating. Anything anyone wants to say further about the term ableism? Any other examples you've seen or any questions you have in trying to understand what it is?
Hello, sir. It's me, Eliza, again.
Hi,
I
Lisa.
actually wanted to ask a question because
Sure.
this is something that I've been grappling with. I have a friend, and almost fortunately, she is not Indonesian. She's Dutch. She's from the Netherlands. She's disabled, um, mentally and also physically. She's mentally disabled and physically disabled. She has TBI, traumatic brain injury, and she has a medical condition that made her sometimes unable to move because of the pain that she was in. And she frequently tells me how she is unable to get proper care and diagnoses from her doctors because of how hard it is for people to get to her because of the medical system in Netherlands. I want to ask whether or not this is a form of ableism, because in all technicalities, the Dutch government do give her all the help that they can give. They assign her a doctor, they assign her a specialist, but to get to those doctors and specialists and to get actual diagnoses and treatment is so incredibly hard that it might as well not be there. So is that ableism, or is that more something else? Is that something else?
Okay, I'm going to turn the question back to you, Eliza, or to one of your peers. It's a great question. I'm going to ask you what you think, or if someone else wants to answer Eliza's question. Is that a form of ableism? Our medical system, in this case in the Netherlands, I'll say more about that in a minute. In this case, we're talking about the Netherlands, which you said provides other kinds of benefits for your friend, but the medical system itself is not really accessible to your friend, is not accommodating your friend. Those are some of the terms they use. So what do you think? Is that ableism? Anybody, Eliza or anybody?
Nah, itu juga.
You know you're on mute, right? I assume you know you're on mute. Are you translating? Right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, okay, that's fine. That's good. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Someone wants to answer, sir.
Okay. And again, if they want to say Bahasa Indonesian, you or someone else can interpret. That's fine.
Thank you. My name is Ayumi. I want to try to answer the question about is that the system ableism or not?
Mhm.
I think that is ableism because when someone have disabilities and they hard to find the doctors and the system is so complicated. I think that is ableism because where I describe about ableism is not only belief or practice about people in ableism, but also where the system that devalue or discriminate against people with disabilities. That's from me. Thank you.
And you know what, Ayumi, I agree with you entirely, and I think that was in Elisa's question, leading us to that answer. Absolutely. Anything that makes it more difficult, that obstructs, impedes, hampers, is a barrier based on physical, mental, other conditions, is a form of ableism, other forms of impairments or disabilities. So, in fact, I don't know, Pak Sigit, if you remember, but last year, I think it was maybe when I was in Bali, maybe in November, I believe, possibly October, I spoke at the Facultas of Medicine, yeah, about that very problem. Access to the medical system, to doctors and health providers based on disability. There was a whole forum on that. Most of it was in Bahasa Indonesia. I could not understand, and there was no translation, but I spoke in English. Do you remember that? And
Yeah, I remember.
yeah, and let me say further, it's not just Indonesia and Netherlands, which has a very complicated history, the Netherlands and Indonesia, right? But in the United States, it continues to be an issue today. It's a big issue in the disabled community. The doctors, everything from the examination rooms to the hours, to the access to the building, to the communication with the doctors, whether again it's based on physical or communication, hearing set, all of that, that's a huge area of discussion and concern. Access to medical care, access to healthcare. So thanks for raising that. Are there other questions in the little time we have? I'm going to say right now before I forget, I hope to come back towards the end of the semester in, let's say, late November or before the final exams, when I'll be back in the United States, a little bit more certain, to come back and talk again about some of the things we're talking about today or new questions that you have. I'm very happy to do that. But are there further issues anyone wanted to raise today? I know in particular, Pak Sigit told me before today there was concerns about mental health disability, mental disability, and mental illness maybe. If someone wants to raise a question about that or make a statement.
Yes, thank you for your questions. Hello, I am Hani again.
Okay.
I want to tell about mental disability, about autism. I have a friend with middle level of autism spectrum who often get mocked by his friend about being autism, is unable to concentration or gain significant achievement in school. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for raising that, honey. The autism, many of you know, it's increasingly talked about in society. Modern medical procedures able to diagnose autism in more recent years. Big controversy in the United States where our president and Health and Human Services Minister Secretary stupidly said it's caused by Tylenol, aspirin. Totally incorrect, no evidence, but doesn't take away from the fact that there is a lot of discrimination based on autism. Again, treatment, equal treatment. This is a case where, although I said before, it's not all about intention, but that factors in as well. The prejudice that's there, the misconceptions, the stereotypes, that can add to and enhance what otherwise is discriminatory behavior. But people with autism may face discrimination in, again, in the educational system and in other respects. And one thing about autism, different from, let's say, physical disability, someone who's blind or hard of hearing or in a wheelchair, we don't see that. We call that sometimes the invisible disability, right? Like other mental health issues, invisible disability. It's not apparent to other people. And so our societal expectations are affected by that. And as Hani pointed out, autism is on a spectrum. So you can't assume that someone has autism is necessarily going to be reacting the same way, responding the same way, interacting with society the same way. This is where the stereotypes come in and the failure to accept. Autism is a discussion, again, we can have all into itself. In fact, the label, is it mental health disability? Is it a developmental disability? Labels become very confusing a lot of the time, and don't always allow us to look more closely. I am really so impressed with your questions and comments today, and your attendance. Thank you for showing up at a time. I know this is not when your class usually meets, but I'm really pleased to be able to have this interchange with you. And I think we've covered a lot of ground. One thing about a class, it should always leave more questions and more thinking. I think if you look at the readings for the optional reading, number 3, the glossary of terms, that may help reinforce some of the discussion today. I know you'll be having some other sessions in the next few weeks. Remind me, when is the last class before final exams?
I think in the second week of December 2025.
December what?
Second week.
Oh, okay. Okay. Right. So let's try to have one more session maybe in late November. Whatever.
Okay.
We'll arrange that. This worked. I think this room worked well because it's hard to do virtual sessions. And you're all tiny, 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 tiny. I can't see you. But again, terima kasih for the time together. And I will say sampai jumpa. Okay. All right. See you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Bye-bye.